good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Black Talk Platform. I am your host, Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins, and tonight I am sharing that we have had to shift our schedule from Friday evenings, and I really appreciate those who've been with us on a Friday when you could be out and doing other things. But unfortunately, our schedules, mine and Pastor Davis, who is my co host, have changed through the end of April. And we still feel very committed to Black Talk. Obviously, it's my baby. So I will come as often as I can on Sundays to be with you. I really do think that there are things both prophetically and otherwise that the Lord would have me and Pastor Davis share with those of you who tune in. And so we appreciate you being here tonight. Tonight, we are taking a moment, not of politics, but of reflection, gratitude, and a deeper reckoning as we honor a man who dedicated his life to justice, to dignity, and to the profound belief that every human being matters. The Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. passed away at the age of 84 earlier this past week, leaving behind a legacy that shaped civil rights, expanded political participation, and inspired generations of activists both here at home and around the world. He walked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the darkest chapters of America's struggle for equality, and he stood with courage when it was neither easy nor popular. He founded Operation Push and the Rainbow Coalition. He built movements that energized millions and fought tirelessly for voting rights, economic justice, and human dignity. Reverend Jackson was never afraid of truth, including the hard and incomplete parts of it. He was willing to stand unapologetically for justice, but he was also willing to acknowledge when he fell short. And that willingness to own his humanity was part of what made him a truly enduring moral voice. In one such moment that I choose to bring to your memory, it was when he recognized that his words had caused harm, even unintentionally. He said, "For any harm or hurt that this may have caused, I apologize. My support for Senator Obama's campaign was wide, deep, and unequivocal." That statement, simple, humble, direct, reminds us that leadership is not perfection, but accountability. It's not avoidance of error, but acknowledgement of impact. And that is what that apology demonstrated. Yet, for all of his complexity, there was one message he returned to again and again, a message that became a battle cry for millions: keep hope alive. Three words that carried the weight of history, the pain of injustice, and the promise of possibility, and the unshakable belief that tomorrow could be better than today. Reverend Jackson didn't just lead movements, he named the dignity in people that centuries of oppression had tried to deny. He demanded not merely inclusion, but recognition. He also understood that civil rights was not simply about policy, but also about identity, belonging, and the right to be counted among the human family. Tonight, I want to honor that legacy, not by nostalgia, but by sentimental and not by sentimentality, I'm sorry, but by holding his life up as a challenge to each of us to speak for the voiceless, to stand with the marginalized, to push for justice when it's hard, when it's unpopular, and when it's demanding, and to keep hope alive even when the world seems designed to snuff it out. Because that was Reverend Jackson's gift. It was his gift to all of us. Hope that wasn't naive but determined. It was disciplined and unyielding. And so I would really, really love to get into that just for a brief moment. I am having a medical issue within my home and I need to get back to it. But for one who has deeply impacted my life, I thought it would be prudent to take out time and share with you some of my thoughts. To be sure, all week, clergy, non clergy, elected officials, non elected officials, community leaders, and more importantly, Reverend Jackson's family, his children, have spoken words. And there have been feathers ruffled over some words, offense taken over some words, even exception taken over some words. And not the least of those words being mine own. I wrote an article about the impact that Reverend Jackson has had on my life. And I felt it was important to not be one of those people who get on a platform, whatever that platform may look like, and try to sanitize the man. My children already know that when I pass, and they don't like to have this discussion, I don't think many people do. But they're the only two people who can speak about me. And that is because I don't want people standing over me with these rosy platitudes that just stir emotion. I really pray that the dash has left an imprint on this earth. And I believe that that's what Reverend Jackson did for me. As a young woman beginning her journey into the clergy, it was important to have a voice like Reverend Jackson that was loud and bold and unapologetic. I was raised in a church where the liberative Jesus was taught and preached. And that is who I have been. That is who I am. And so to watch this Black man give this roaring speech at the Democratic convention, and not only be a man, but also a member of clergy, but not only be a member of clergy, having been there marching alongside the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was amazing. And I chose tonight to share a vulnerable moment for Reverend Jackson when he issued an apology for having been hot mic'd and saying some words that were unkind towards um, then Senator Obama. And there were other things, and I write about that in my Substack article when I reviewed his impact on my life. Everyone's take is going to be different. But if those of you who follow Black Talk Platform for any amount of time or who know me in real life, I am not pretentious. I do not sugarcoat things, and nor am I rude or lacking in class. But what I will always be is honest. So having all of this admiration for Reverend Jackson, as a young woman, as a young Black woman, as a young clergy person or someone who was aspiring to become a clergy person. To see him fall was harmful to the idea that I had set up in my own mind about who the man was. I did not know him personally. He had become a model of excellence in social justice movements as a clergy, in my opinion. My entire life as a clergy person has been giving back. And I didn't even realize how closely aligned to Operation Push my ministry was. I just know that as a young woman, I was infused with this power, obviously from the Lord, but he gave me this example in Reverend Jackson. And throughout the week, I've watched as people have pulled out their pictures that they've taken with Reverend Jackson over the years. That's their way of paying homage to who he was in their lives. And I think it's wonderful. We all have different ways of memorializing people, of honoring their memory when they're no longer with us. They chose a pictorial journey. I chose to share how his impact on me as a clergy member, as a public facing theologian, as a social justice activist, how it impacted me. But in that article, also the Substack article I mentioned, I shared very transparently how for but a brief moment, and I don't mean like a few minutes, I mean in time, for a brief moment there, I almost let that great impact that he'd had on my life be considered null and void because of his personal life. And I tell you, I am so far from perfect, but I would not want my life, my ministry, my service reduced to my humanity. And let me say it another way. If Deborah Jenkins has ever inspired, impacted you in a positive manner to go and do something within your sphere of influence, and then you found that one day I was falling down drunk or something, some moral failing, right? From a biblical perspective, I would hate for you to then erase that positive impact that I may have had on your life at some point because you saw me fall down drunk in public. And I think when I reevaluated, this was years ago, that was not now. When I reevaluated how I perceived Reverend Jackson following his humanity, I realized that there was a break in the continuity of understanding and learning that I experienced. And therefore, I had caused myself not to grow in a certain area. I have plenty of models. He was one of them. And I hold to what I did learn through his public witness. But I also hold myself accountable for that time frame where I allowed the cord to be broken in terms of the continuity of my learning from him. There are so many people who can influence us and impact us from time to time and at any given time. And we have to be very careful not to deify them. I don't care what your religion is. Mine is that of following Christ. That's my faith. I follow Christ. And I look to Christ because I know he's the only way I will get to his Father, the Most High God. That's my faith. And so my faith teaches me that I am not to deify another, but that there will be those great clouds of witnesses. There will be those who have walked before me who can provide guidance and examples. But what I see and what I've seen, oh my goodness, I'm just not, I don't even carry that word Christian, because what's on this earth right now purporting to be Christian is just, it's not my definition. It's not what I see in the Bible. So, but that's why I always say I'm a follower of Christ. And what I've seen and what I've studied is that we as Black people, we have this need to make people demigods or worship men or women, and we make excuses for everything. And so we need to grow. So, because some of us are just looking at Reverend Jackson and saying, wow, I'm so sorry he's gone. Well, yes, but no one is more sorry than his wife and children and grandchildren. He was theirs. He belonged to them. He impacted many of our lives, but he was theirs. And so anything I'm doing is out of that sense of honoring. And I love how his son said, you are free to come to my father's funeral, but leave your politics elsewhere. These are young people. These are his children who have grown up in the movement, who have seen people turn their back on their father, who have seen people smile in their father's face and stab him in the back. They've seen it all. And some within their were within the party that he ran for president on. Some were outside of the party. Some were considered close friends. Some run around and say who he was to them today. Don't assume you know unless you hear them say who they're specifically talking about. When they say, don't bring your politics here, they're not there for it. Reverend Jackson was also a pastor. And no one knows better than a pastor the extreme toll carrying the weight of other people's problems and trying to make sure you're okay and make sure your family is okay while you're making sure everybody else is okay. What his was a calling to much greater. And many of the people who are criticizing, there was a sister who we've been following each other on Twitter for several years. And so I retweeted when the family asked House Speaker Mike Johnson to allow Reverend Jackson to lie at state at the Capitol. And I was furious, but for different reasons. This is not going to prevent them from honoring their father and their husband. They're going to do it. But for someone who has had the impact that Jesse Jackson has had on the earth, in this nation, and beyond, having brokered a deal to free 1,000 American prisoners from another country, something Mike Johnson can't even dream of doing because he cannot even unify the House of Representatives. But nevertheless, he refused it. Yet the Republicans allowed there to be this same request granted to Charlie Kirk. So the sister responded, oh, stop it. Because basically I said, I'm going to do whatever I can to help him lose power in the House of Representatives. I don't have any power over what happens in Tennessee. And I don't believe or expect that for 1 minute, anyone is going to not reelect him. But for him to be the House Speaker again? Whatever I can do, whatever I can do, whatever I can do. If I have to make some calls in certain districts to ensure that Democrats retake the House of Representatives, because for any Black person who is okay with the way this country is going, I don't care if you did vote for the President of the United States, that's your business. But the way the United States is being led right now, we don't have leadership in the House of Representatives. We don't have leadership in the United States Senate, because they are lapdogs for this president who is blowing up this country. And so for this sister to tell me, oh, stop it. One was assassinated for his beliefs, and another, he did, I forget what she said. But because I typically give much more respect to people who follow me and I them than they typically give to me, I just said, what we're not going to do is try to sit here and pretend that what Mike Johnson did was out of some sense of some sense of, oh, doing right. He hasn't done right since he's been there. He owes his whole speakership to the president of the United States, because those Republicans were about to run his behind out of there. And so now he has to do whatever Trump tells him to do. But there's a faction, an arm of Black people who cannot be honest and say, well, yeah, I had problems with Reverend Jackson, and say, but yet and still, he did more to advance the cause of Black people than a Mike Johnson, than a Charlie Kirk. And I'm not about to make this about Charlie Kirk, because after all, he was lost to his children as well. But it just, I don't know. And then there's a group, it was Reverend Jackson who pushed for the name African American, and then, the little things. But there are a whole lot of policy issues that public facing people will push for and ensure that those things become policy. But the question that we have to continuously ask ourselves, what are we doing? How many bills have you gotten passed based off of your pushing it or writing it? How much impact have you had on advancing the cause of Black people? And to me, it doesn't have to be freeing 1,000 hostages. It doesn't have to be on that scale. What it does have to be is something that transforms where you live. It could literally be in your home. We don't know what goes on behind anybody's closed doors until it is something ugly that comes out in public, right? But we can't sit here and judge each other's homes because we're not in them. But if you are going home and you can't find peace in that home, what have you done to create that peace? And I don't mean if you're being abused and you're being misused, you're just allowing things to happen to you. I am saying, what are you doing to transform how you live? And then once you get your house in order, how are you impacting your neighborhood? There's still far too much violence in our communities for us to now want to sit and try to desecrate the memory of someone like a Reverend Jackson who worked so hard on behalf of the Black community. And I say this for anyone who, without evidence, say they believe whatever J. Edgar Hoover and his FBI, or even this one under Kash Patel, would say about Reverend Jackson, Dr. Martin Luther King. I realize that we are not the same. We're just not the same. We cannot debate issues together on this level because you're willing, whereas I'm not, to try to erase all the good that Jesse Jackson did on behalf of Black people because of certain things that you now believe about him that are in the public sphere. I am a follower of Christ, and by following Christ, I understand that forgiveness, and don't ever, no one ever come to me and ask me about my heart of forgiveness. It is a big one. I have counseled people who have a very difficult time with that, and they fear that, because of the way we believe, that they will miss heaven. Yet everybody, when somebody passes, says they're resting in heaven now. Really? You guys, that's how you all see the Bible? Okay. All right. But so don't come to me and tell me to stop it when there's a comparison, an legitimate comparison being made between Mike Johnson's refusal to honor the request of Jesse Jackson's family to have him lie at state at the Capitol, and not thinking twice, a resolution was made and passed and carried to do the same for Charlie Kirk. That's just ridiculous to me. That's ridiculous to me. But it's also a small thing because he's being honored in good fashion, and as we would expect anyway, right? Now, I'm not sure what his son meant when he said that the one thing that bothered his dad just before he passed was missing a call from the president. Honestly, I don't know what was meant by that. Did he want to have a call with him? Was he awaiting for the president to call him? I really don't know what that means. But I've heard, and maybe you have as well, that when people feel their death, they want everything to be as right as possible. And some things are just beyond our control, and we have to really embrace that too at a certain point. But if he made all efforts, I think that's wonderful. But if he missed the call, I hate that for him. And if it was that important to him. So listen, I didn't have my co-host tonight, Pastor Davis, and I'm hopeful that he is well wherever he is. I'm growing. And I praise the Most High God for the growth. I am not bound by what people think of me. I am not bound by people's expectations of me. I am living to the best of my ability according to the word of God and what I believe his purpose for my life is. And for me to have sat and not say something about the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson would have just been a missed opportunity for me. And I also understand that as long as we are able to immortalize our voices and our video, this is legacy for my children and my grandchild. I want them to be able to look back and say she did something. She did something with the exposure that she was allowed to have. And that's what I'm doing. I really am. I have spent my entire adult life helping others, but now it's a sweet spot. I can help others without harming myself. Oh, that's for another time. That's for another time. But Reverend Jackson, to his family, his children, and his beautiful wife, who I always remember being right by his side for most of that public facing time. She is a musician, I understand. She is a mother. She is a grandmother. I always admired Mrs. Jacqueline Jackson. And I just pray that they are, strong in this moment and they are able to, as so many of us have done, just stay united, and that they are able to take one day at a time, and that the world will allow them that grace that we all need following the loss of a loved one. Now, I'm not going to really get into the NYPD's continuing um, problem. We know that there are continuing problems with the NYPD. That's just the nature of the beast. But that subject was to be led by Pastor Davis, who is not here. And so hopefully next week he'll be back and we'll be able to take that up, unless there's another pressing subject that we really need to address. Before I end, I need to do my shout out. My shout out is today to Dr. Carl Mack. I've known Dr. Mack through social media for about 10 years, I would say 9 or 10 years. And let me tell you how he came to my attention. My son was getting ready to go off to college to study engineering. And Dr. Mack, my cousin, one of my baby cousins, is an engineer, and she had told me about him. So it may be longer than that. Um, she had told me about him. I don't know if she had done work with him, but he was the leader of an engineering club or association, and she thought it would be a great opportunity for me to connect my son to his work. I reached out, very friendly man. And so that's how we've connected over the years. But Dr. Carl Mack is super bad, super bad. He has a wonderful family, but beyond that, he is not only an engineer, he's a lover of his people. He loves the Black community. And several years ago, he published these cute little flippable Black history calendars. I purchased at least 2 of them, I believe, over the years. I think he has several parts to them. But what he's done now is something spectacular. The calendars, they were flippable, and I always had it on my desk, but I've moved things around in here. Flippable by the day. Just, I guess you call them a perpetual calendar. On each day of the year, you're flipping and you're finding Black history knowledge. He didn't just include the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X's, he put people who you needed to know, who you need to know in these calendars. And so Reverend Barbara, who's not with me tonight, but I'm sure she'll catch the replay, she sent me a text and she said, did you know about this? I said, no. I'm like, what is this? So I clicked through. Dr. Carl Mack has taken it to the next level. He has created the Black Heritage Day app. It is available both on Android and iOS. It is free, and it operates in the same way the perpetual calendar does. Yesterday was Superbad's sister Barbara Jordan from Texas's birthday. Guess who was on February 21st? You got it right. Barbara Jordan. Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. And today is no different. He has another woman. Let me see if I can get her up here real quick, since I have a little bit of time, because I was unfamiliar with her. So you download the calendar and you click it, the app that is. And today is Frances Ellen Harper. You can't see that. Frances Ellen Harper. She was a lecturer, an activist, and an author. She was born in 1825 and she passed in 1911. She was born in Baltimore, Maryland. She was one of the most gifted lecturers of her time. She was so effective in delivering her anti-slavery messages, both the Maine and Pennsylvania anti-slavery societies hired her as a lecturer. Harper often risked her life promoting racial pride and moral reform by speaking in southern states from 1867 to 1871. Her first published collection of poetry was Forest Leaves, published in 1851. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because I really want you to go and download the Black Heritage Day app. This will do your soul good every day. I love it how we say, I'm Black history every day of the year, 24/7, 365. Well, let's prove it now. Let's prove it by increasing your Black history knowledge beyond 28 days. This calendar, I think, is a life changer. And when you're feeling down wherever you are, when things aren't going well, when you're really feeling the weight of being in this country and still not being equal in so many ways, pull out the Black Heritage app and just be inspired. I'm inspired because I love to lecture. I'm a teacher. I love that both Maine and Pennsylvania anti slavery, let me get it right now. I don't want to say it wrong. Anti slavery, I was right. Societies hired her as their official lecturer. And the fact that she risked her life for the cause of her people, that's another model for me. And I cannot be the only one picking up new models for my work. You all must do it. We all must do it. We are such wonderful people on earth. Why do you think there's such a concerted effort to take us out in different ways? Well, you don't have to think any longer. Download the Black Heritage app. I am not a paid endorser. I believe in what Dr. Mack has done here, has been doing for years. He's been trying to empower us with knowledge beyond what the schools give our children, and they're still complaining, as we all still complained while we were in school. He's going so far beyond. Please support his work. This is a labor of love for him. He earns our shout out for Black Talk Platform, February 22nd, 2020, 2026. Listen, as I said, having a family medical thing over here, we're all okay, but attention is needed. And I'm going to go and join my husband in caring for those who are in need. I appreciate your following. I'm just being me. I know you know me as Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins, but at the end of the day, my family knows me the way they know me. And I love them, and I love this opportunity to come before you all. If you have negative thoughts about Dr. King, not Dr. King, I'm so sorry. If you have negative thoughts about Reverend Jackson, and you have not drilled down to make sure that you've crossed every T and dotted every I in your position, then like we all desire and all are given by the Most High God, extend a little grace. This is a hard time for his family, and they need all of the positive energy they can receive. Now, this was very different tonight, but it's just me being transparent and paying homage to none other than the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. God bless you all. Please go back, watch it, and share it with a friend. You would be surprised the new perspectives that we can all gain if we just listen to things that we're not accustomed to listening to. So I'd appreciate it if you share. God bless you all. Take care. Good night, and I hope to see you next Sunday. Peace.